So there's a Dymo LabelManager 160. And what's happening is you press print and it doesn't advance. And so you go through the usual troubleshooting tips, like pressing this little button on the side. And everything, if there were batteries in there, the spindle would spin and it would appear to hear the motors. And you know, you look at the usual things and you take up this spindle. This is counterclockwise. If you're looking at this and need to take up some slack, counterclockwise on that. But in my case, what I think is going on is that this little head is supposed to press down when I shut the case. In fact, you're supposed to be able to shut the case and see that head shutting down. This isn't doing that. So my assumption is there was a gear or a lever that fell off here or broke. So what I'm going to do is take this apart and just see if I can fix it. I'm starting by taking off screws with this long Phillips head here, and I see some screws that'll be inside here. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll take those apart and see if I can figure out where this lever is, because until this thing starts to close, when I shut this door, my printer is not going to start printing again. All right, so when you get those screws off, all that happens is this comes off, and now I got to tackle how to get this off that back base. The strategy will be this screw here and this screw here first to get at a couple screws underneath there. So those two first. Okay, I doubt I really want to go too far because this is so tied down. But what I notice is you see that head lever, there's this mechanism that appears to bring the head to and fro. So I'm going to investigate if there's something missing, broken in that area. Just warning, if you try something like this, look at those little ribbon cables. They would be so easy to tear off. You know, that whole LCD is connected by this long ribbon. So you can't just think it's tape and rip it off. You'll ruin it. It's really tough to get under there. But I think this big black plastic thing with the two screws is where my mechanism is broken. Okay, so here's how you get a little more working room. This LCD is just taped to that back drop. So just pry it up from this back side very gently. It's glass. Pry it up and it'll come off that double sticky tape and give you some more room. So now with that piece off, I have a theory. See, here's this mechanism. Here's this arm. My thinking is this came too far, and this is actually supposed to ride back and forth between there. So I'm going to try to force this that far over and just see if now that, there we go. Yes. Let's get that. Oh, there. So you see how that little thing rode right under there? Maybe that's it. No. Well, maybe. Let's see what happens. So now it's covering it, and that thing was enough size that it could ride back and forth there, although I think it also maybe was supposed to be on the inside. But let me see what happens. I'll put this together and see if that was the trick. Now that that stuff fell out, I can tell that wasn't the trick because there's no room under there. But look at the end of that arm. There's a little hole that clearly was probably for an arm, and it looks like maybe, is that even broken? Not broken, but probably a pin fell out of that arm, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to fix that. Yeah, there clearly was a spring, probably, in that little hole, because if that spring was there, that would pull that this way and force the thing over. So there was a spring in there. Now maybe I can find the spring. I didn't see anything fall out, but maybe I can find it. Sure enough, there is the spring. It's still attached on the other end. If you open that door, you can see I've got a spring just kind of dangling there at the other end. So I just have to somehow grab that with a pliers maybe and reconnect it to the hole in question. Giving you a wider shot so you can see where I was looking, but I'm on the back side now, opening the door and looking at that spring mechanism that's just kind of dangling there. Not easily able to get the spring out, so what I'm going to do is you see that there's this little pin, the light-colored pin that is holding the black-colored door on. I'm going to pry off that pin because it's kind of got a spring to give way. That's how they assembled it. And I'm just going to extricate the door, 5 millimeters to see if I get better access to the pin. Really careful turning this thing over. Stuff keeps falling out. This pin fell out, and I think if I look at the videos from the beginning, I'll see where it fell out of. I think I can tell, but you know, this thing, you turn it upside down and just stuff randomly starts falling out of this space. Hopefully this wasn't important. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get that back door out without breaking off the door. And another one of these fell out. That's not looking good. Well, somehow through my jiggling, I haven't got the door off, but I got that spring to come out the other side, which isn't the side I want it on, but I've got this, what do you call it? A hemostat or something, medical device. Some needle nose pliers would work. I've got to somehow get that through to be able to attach it to that loop on the little mechanism. Otherwise, I'm out of luck. Not sure if you can see that, but there's the loop now from the top. Somehow I need to grab that and loop it around the little mechanism, which seems pretty impossible at this point. I have better luck if I get this door off to then attach the spring to the mechanism and then hope I can reattach the door to the spring. I don't see that I'm going to be able to somehow get this over that spring with it still attached to the door. I now have the door off, and I think what I'm going to try to do is get the spring off the door, fix it to that other mechanism, and then try to get the spring reattached to the door. Showing you the approach I'm doing is I'm now spreading apart this plastic to get that pin out, and I'm going to slip the spring over the pin because I think it'll be harder to get the shape of the spring end to reform. So I'm now going to slip that over that, and then I'm going to worry about getting this back to the mechanism, and we'll see what luck we have getting it in reverse. Since I have a bad end, that was the one that snapped off the spring, I'm going to reattach the good end to the mechanism, and then I'll be dealing with the bad end, reattaching it to the door, because, you know, I don't want to have two bad ends. I'd rather have one perfect end and one bad end that I repair than two repaired bad ends. So I'm just confirming that those two posts that fell out did indeed fall out from there and that other hole right there where the other mechanism was. So now I'm going to attach the spring to that hole that you see. It's not focused, but that hole at the bottom of that black lever. Contrary to what I said, I decided to put the bad end of the spring back on this mechanism, and now I'm going to try to reassemble with this dangling and somehow get that to reattach to that door. Okay, so you see I've put the black lever down, I've got the spring reattached, and I've got that pole that fell out sitting in there. Now I'm going to assemble the two other pieces that came out with the metal rod. Okay, so you put that pin back in, then you put that other black piece down like that, so the three are in series. And when the spring gets pulled, it'll throw the black arm, which will throw the gray arm, which is the print head. Now I just have to screw down this other piece on top. Okay, so now you can see I used the two screws to screw the black piece back down. And I think I'm going to try to reattach everything. I mean, you might want to leave it loose, but now you see the dangling spring. So the last challenge will be to get that back inside the door. But I'm first going to reattach everything here. So first I'll reattach that. I'll screw these two things down, if there were two screws, if I recall. And then I'll probably put the front cover back on. So now those two screws, that one and that one, are both reattached. Everything seems to be square. And I've just carefully placed that back down and applied, pressure so it could re-grab the tape. There'll be little things like this that are loose that you'll have to snug in as you reapply the face. But I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, let's just see. Let's try to get this door on before we do anything else. All right, just a little setup as to what I'm looking at. So I use this tool to just kind of pry this off of that nub. And the plastic's a little bent out of place, but what I've got to do is I've got to take my hemostat, whatever it's called, and I have to take that and loop it back through there. And if I can do that without, and even if it should be within the tolerance of stretch, so I should be able to stretch that to there and then force this whole door back on, and I should be golden. I've got this little pin mechanism And I'm going to basically, and I've opened that up so that there's a channel without having to force it. I'm going to slip that over that and then, reclose the plastic. Sorry I can't show this to you, but I only have so many hands. Well, I could get my thing. Hold on. All right, this focus might rack because I think it's live focused, but I've now got this enough of a gap between there and there. These are pretty fragile, so as you pry them, you don't want to pry them too hard, but they seem to be forgiving enough that they don't break if you pry them that far. And you'll notice I have the smallest, well, I did have the smallest of gaps, because I'm going to need that to, and I'm going to bend it a little more. Boy. Yeah, it's very close, but I'm going to now try to thread the needle, almost literally, and get that little end of the pin over. Come on, oh, it looks good, looks good. Oh, it looks really close, but I don't have enough space there. I had it, you see that? I had it, but I'm gonna try to force that a little bit more. You're gonna hear a crack, and I'm gonna go, darn it. Because and if I had a spudger, well, maybe I can use this as a temporary mechanism for, yeah, so if I use that for leverage, I'm gonna throw the leverage right at the moment that I thread the needle. So, all right, here I go. Stretching, I should have a lot of play. Oh! Came off. So, it came off. I got to start over, go back in, reattach this, and darn it. I was close, though. I feel close. So, folks, earlier I was debating whether or not I had a hole there. And what I've determined is indeed I do have a fracture of some kind. But it doesn't seem, it took a lot of pressure for that to come off of there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this end with some glue to just kind of maybe reinforce the end. And I'm going to give it another go here when the glue dries. So I decided that glue probably wasn't going to work, and rather than try it and fail, I decided to try to use my heat gun to melt it, and then I wound up ruining the tip. So even though I could buy a broken one of these for $2, the shipping's $8. So rather than buy a part, I'm going to 3D print this. So there's my 3D printed design. Seems to be about the same measurement. I'm going to print that and see how close I get. Alright, so I quickly just designed that by measuring it with a micrometer, and it looks pretty close, and I think it'll work. If not, I'll tweak it and print it a few times. But so now we have our solid piece with a loop that won't come off. So on this 3D printed part, I am having to take a round file and just kind of cleaning things up on the inside so that everything's smooth, because this is spring-loaded, but, if it's rough, it's not going to actuate the way it's supposed to actuate. All right, so I 3D printed a new gizmo, actuating arm, whatever you want to call it, and now I'm going to just try to thread this onto there, which I might need, hold on. There you go, got it. Oh, you didn't see it. You don't see it, but I've got it. And now I gotta retract the darn thing. Oh, don't lose it. I gotta get the door to shut. What can I use here? I'm gonna use this to push that back in its place. Getting close. It's done. Now, so I managed to, pry that thing off and then get that slipped over. Now I got to get it back on its hinges. Come on, baby. Oh, there we go. Now it's spring-loaded again, that door, and you see it actuates. See? shut the door, you could start to see, if you look from the top, you could see the head actuates again. So when I open the door all the way, head is away. When I shut it, the head actuates. So that what was wrong. The spring had broken through the cheap plastic. It appears to have actually just cut its way through it over time, even though this wasn't very heavily used. And I 3D printed a replacement part. So I'll post a link to the 3D printed part I designed. And you know, if you have a 3D printer, or if you have a friend who has a 3D printer, or you can even send it to a 3D printing shop. You don't need to own a 3D printer to get this stuff done. There's online services where you just say, here's the part, print it in this material. And it's just typical PLA is what I printed it in. It worked fine. And I suppose now I should prove that it works. So let me pause and box this back up. All right, the moment of truth. I put the back together, put in a new cartridge. There it is. So that's what was wrong with it. I will post the 3D part that I designed, and I will post this video, and I'll give thanks to the fella who, you know, showed me a couple of the tips, and I'll post some other links to the other tips, because there were some other tips that you try first. You know, you try pressing here and making sure that advances, and then you try twisting this. So I'll post to some of the other videos in addition. Do not subscribe. Do not like. I do not care. I just do this for the one person on the planet who needs it, and hopefully someone finds it. But don't subscribe. I don't post anything in a certain category. It wouldn't be worth your time.